I can hear it. Oh. The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcasted by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. And the first item on the agenda is request authorization for the approval of the minutes of December 14th, 2017. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 2, request authorization to re-advertise and reissue a request for proposals for the redevelopment of Parcel M located at 3 Dolphin Way within the Raymond L. Flynn Park.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Madam Secretary. Parcel M is a 3-acre site improved by a functionally obsolete industrial building. The zoning requires at least 50% of the site to be maritime dependent, and the remainder can be general industrial. In February of 2017, BPDA issued an RFP for the site with all proposals due on April 5th, 2017. We received 3 proposals, and after review, the recommendation was made to the board in June 2017, requesting that Boston Global Investors be awarded tentative designation status on behalf of New Boston Food Mart Development Corporation for a period of 6 months. BGI, Boston Global Investors, intended to build a 120,000 square foot multi-tenanted seafood processing facility to assist in the relocation of the seafood businesses over at Wedette Circle. After completing its due diligence, BGI decided not to proceed with the development. We're requesting permission to advertise a new RFP for the development of Parcel M, and we strongly believe that the market demand for this development parcel remains solid even with the development use restrictions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 3, request authorization to enter into a license agreement with Optimus Ride, Inc. for the use of a portion of parcel C-1 within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Maureen.
Optimus Ride is a developer of state-of-the-art software for self-driving cars. Optimus Ride has entered into a partnership with the City of Boston and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, establishing ground rules for the testing of autonomous vehicles. And their intent is to periodically use the roadways in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park to test the vehicles, and they've been doing that for about a year, 6 months to a year. In 2016 and 17, Optimus Ride utilized a portion of Parcel C1 to store and test the vehicles, and they also placed trailers there and to house the vehicles when they weren't on site. We're excited about the potential of the vehicles and look forward to working closely with Optimus Ride, the City of Boston, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we're asking for authorization to enter into a license agreement to allow them, again, to use a portion of Parcel C1 through March 31st, 2017. They have to vacate by April 1st of 2017 because there is a license for Massport overflow parking for the cruise port. Due to the innovative use and limited resources, no fee is proposed at this time.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. Any questions from the board?
I've raised this question about our testing of autonomous vehicles several times, and I'll raise it again. With an understanding that I'm a major advocate of their development, and I think that they'll contribute significantly to reducing congestion and doing a range of other good things. Optimus, like the other companies, is a for-profit company, and at some point they and their owners or partners will derive substantial financial benefit from the work that they've done testing on our public ways. And I wonder, again, in what ways could this agency or the city derive some financial benefit now or in the future from the outcomes of the testing that they're doing.
That's a good consideration. There may be some benefit for us. I don't have an answer to that question, but because it's such a huge amount of people that need to meet, we have an MOU with the city and the state and MassDOT, and there's so many agencies that are involved just in them driving on the roads in the marine park. So I believe, I agree with you, they'll do very well. So.
Yeah, at some point they'll be bought or sold, or they'll develop their own product that will generate IPOs and, in all likelihood, millions of dollars of benefit. And I'm happy to see that.
Mm-hmm.
But it does seem to me that since they're using our public ways, that there ought to be a way, either now or in the future, where we could also derive some public benefit from what they're doing.
It's something we could consider if we renew the MOUs or have a new discussion with them, if they ask for any kind of extension or any more land to potentially license.
Thank
you. Ted, I remember you bringing that up, and I have a comment on it. Certainly the roads, the public roads, people use them to get to work, and some people use them as part of their work. And most of us pay taxes to do that. But you could say the same about a driver's ed company, that their business is for kids to learn how to drive, and they use the public streets, and they certainly make money off of those streets. So I think it's a slippery slope, but I know where you're going with that. But certainly trucking companies and people that move commerce over infrastructure, they wouldn't be able to do it if it weren't for public roads. And so I don't know where you make that split, and certainly the driver's ed companies are not as profitable as this autonomous vehicle technology that's going to eventually come, but that's just my thought on it.
Okay, any other further comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Maureen. Item number 4, request authorization to execute an engineering service contract with Howard Stein Hudson for the roadway improvement project at Black Falcon Ave and Terminal Street within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park in an amount not to exceed $299,650. Paul.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Polimus, and Director Golden. Black Falcon Avenue is approximately 3,000 linear feet, and due to its age and heavy traffic and construction activity, it requires asphalt resurfacing and other improvements. Black Falcon and Terminal Street have not had any resurfacing or over an extensive period of time. Therefore, a civil design engineer is necessary for designing the improvements, which will include scarifying the new bituminous concrete overlay, repairs of handicap ramps, new sidewalks, curbing, traffic signage, and roadway striping. So on the red indication on that, that's where it goes all the way from the right side of the Innovation and Design Building all the way down to the intersection of Dry Dock Avenue. So it's about 3,000 linear feet. So on September 14th, 2017, the BPDA board approved an advertising for engineering design services for the roadway improvement project. Capital Construction developed a request for proposal for engineering services on November 11th, 2017. The RFP was prepared in accordance with BPDA procurement policy and Mass General Law, Chapter 3039M. And outreach also with MBE, WBE firms was also part of our solicitation. The RFPs were received on December 13th, 2017, and a BPDA review committee reviewed the proposals on December 27th. The 3 firms who submitted were Allen & Major, Howard Stein Hudson, and Niche Engineering. The committee included members of the BPDA Real Estate, Engineering, and Facilities Management, and the Capital Construction Department. Based upon the submitted proposals, the committee unanimously recommends that the contract for engineering services be awarded to Howard Stein Hudson. The committee's choice was based on qualifications, previous site experience in the park, and the ability to complete the design services within the project's funding requirements. Funding for this project is through the City of Boston Office of Budget Management, Capital Planning for the fiscal year 2018.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Paul. Item number 5, request authorization to execute an engineering service contract with Childs Engineering Corporation for the Dry Dock foreclosure and Pier 6 reconstruction project within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park in an amount not to exceed $539,800. Paul?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, again. If you look at that photograph up on the screen, this is Dry Dock 4. We've been here previously with other improvements that we've had to make, specifically the caisson that we had to repair a few years back, as well as all the improvements on Pier 5. So at this juncture, all along here, Pier 6, it's about 900 linear feet of pier. The steel bulkhead cofferdam system is completely corroded, and there's no service life left, I'd say, from the face of the curb all the way back, I'd say probably about 35 feet. So that dock area there represents collapse all along that area. So basically it's condemned right now. So we're going to be evaluating that with Childs Engineering Corporation to determine what's the best corrective measure to get that back in a workable and operational facility. That's work item number one. Item number two, what we're doing as well is the dry dock will never be another dry dock as it is today. There's really no demand for it, especially we have dry dock 3 about a half a mile down the street on Tide Street. So as part of the services, the design engineer, we'll close this off right here. This is where the caisson is. We'll close that off and we'll come up with a design in order to do that. Because the future development will be that the basin here is not usable. So by doing so, by closing it off like that, it'll give the opportunity to fill the basin and then therefore make it available for a future development at the discretion of the development department. So on September 14th, 2017, the board approved the director to advertise engineering and design services contract. Capital Construction developed a request for proposal for engineering services on November 14, 2017. The RFP was prepared in accordance with the BPDA procurement policy and Mass General Laws, Chapter 3039M. An outreach for MBE-WBs was also included with the solicitation for this project. Over 50 consultants downloaded the RFP on the BPDA website. RFPs were received and reviewed by the BPDA Review Committee staff on December 27, 2017. 4 firms expressed interest by submitting a proposal for the work: Childs Engineering, CLE Engineering, GEI Consultants, and PAR Corporation. After a thorough review of the proposal by the committee, it was unanimously recommended that the contract be awarded to Childs Engineering Corporation based on qualifications, prior site experience, reasonable cost, and completing the project within the scheduled requirements. Childs Engineering's scope of work will be to investigate both above and below the water in all conditions in the area of Pier 6, prepare design repair plans for Pier 6 and dry dock closure suitable for public bidding, and they'll also write a reuse report for future development scenarios to help plan what exactly we want to do at that particular site. Funding is from the City of Boston Budget Management Capital Planning for the fiscal year 2018.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Any questions from the board? Hearing none. No questions? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Item number 6, personnel. Travis?
Trent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Secretary. We have a few items for your consideration on the EDIC agenda. We have one employment service agreement with details listed in the board memos for Sabrina Nunez in the Office of Financial Empowerment and OWD. We have 3 travel items for your consideration with details listed in the board memos. The travelers are Cassandra White and Antonio Nunez from OWD. And we have 1 departure, Lara Marita, Deputy Director of Community Planning as of January 30th, 2018.
Wow. Okay, thank you, Trent. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Okay, item number 7, a motion to adjourn the EDIC meeting.
I move we adjourn the EDIC meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned. Okay. The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. And the first item is request authorization for the approval of the minutes of December 14th, 2017 meeting. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second?
Second, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 2, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on February 8th, 2018 at 5:30 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the First Amendment to the Development Plan and Fourth Amendment to the Master Plan for Planned Development Area Number 69, South Boston, the 100 acres, and to consider the General Electric Headquarters project, Notice of Change, as a development impact project. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second?
All's in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Item number 3, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on February 8th, 2018 at 5:40 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the Suffolk Downs Phase 1 project as a development impact project. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second?
All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 4, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on February 8th, 2018 at 5:50 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the Second Amendment to the development plan within Planned Development Area Number 54, Fanpare, Northern Avenue, located at South Boston waterfront. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second?
All's in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Item number 5, Board of Appeal. Jeff, any changes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Polhemus. 30 petitions been prepared for your approval today. These draft petitions were presented at the board on Tuesday, just so that we could have a recommendation for them, but there have been no changes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second?
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Jeff. Item number 6, request authorization to adopt a text amendment for Article 53, East Boston Neighborhood Development District, with respect to the Suffolk Downs Economic Development Area. Tim?
Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Secretary Polhemus. Suffolk Downs is a 160-acre site that spans the Boston Revere border. The site's been identified by the Imagine Boston 2030 plan as a potential expanded neighborhood due to its size, its proximity to transit, and other factors. HYM Investment Group purchased the property, 109 acres of which are in the East Boston neighborhood, in May 2017. This fall, while HYM was putting together its development plan, Amazon released its RFP for a potential second headquarters. Working with HYM, the City of Boston put together a bid response that positioned the Suffolk Downs site as a potential location for Amazon's HQ2. One of the requirements Amazon outlined in its RFP was at least 500 square feet of office space ready for occupation in 2019. On December 5th, HYM filed 2 project notification forms, one for the complete 109-acre site, which we refer to as the master plan, and one for a 2-building, 520,000 square foot office project adjacent to Suffolk Downs Station, which we refer to as Phase 1. Up on the slide there. Both projects are currently being reviewed by staff and the community. The review of the master plan will continue with additional community meetings, the issuance of a scoping determination by BPDA staff, and the eventual submission of a draft project impact report. The Phase 1 project has been the subject of a community meeting and 3 impact advisory group meetings, and will be considered by the board next month at a public hearing as a development impact project. The petition for a zoning amendment that the board is considering this afternoon is designed to provide zoning relief in a targeted way that allows Phase 1 to go forward, but also allows for a robust public discussion on zoning for the larger master plan project. Senior zoning planner Jeff Hampton will present on the proposed amendment, and both of us, as well as Tom O'Brien and Doug Manns from HYM Investment Group, will be available to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. So before you tonight is a text amendment specifically to the dimensional tables for the economic development areas in East Boston. Right now, the maximum allowed height in the Suffolk Downs EDA is 45 feet. The proposed amendment before you tonight is for 125 feet in the shaded area only. It will not apply to the entire Suffolk Downs site, only in this shaded area. We are confident with this proposed zoning change. We have done a zoning change similar to this in terms of description in the south end, specifically in the Harrison-Albany corridor, that area where we have measured different heights and different step backs, certain distances from the center line of right-of-ways. So this is not an unprecedented amendment that would be going before the Zoning Commission. The change, as Tim mentioned, is necessary for the Phase 1 to move forward next month, and we are confident that this will pass the Zoning Commission. I'd be happy to answer any questions, any specific questions you may have on the zoning.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, Jeff, can you talk about this height change in this area relative to potential height changes in the rest of the Suffolk Downs project?
I can't right now, so it's 125 feet from the center line of Bennington Street. It's right, it abuts the blue line. I know there have been visions of 125 going across. However, right now, the as-of-right zoning on the back part going towards McClellan Highway is still going to be 45 feet. Does that answer your question?
I think perhaps... I'll add just to add briefly to that, I think while Tim did a nice job of pointing out that the future phases of the Suffolk Downs site are still part of the ongoing conversation for the master plan that's been filed, so that would be an ongoing conversation there. This is for Phase 1, and we think that appropriate as we think about catalytic development in this EDA near the transit station, that's where you're thinking about there being the most immediate demand for that catalytic development to happen there, and thinking about having the additional height, and then have the ongoing conversation as it relates to the master plan and overall zoning changes for the rest of the site through a more robust master planning process.
And just along with that master plan, I know it's still kind of going kind of in parallel to this, but at a high level, you know, can you speak a little bit to how this would fit into the plan for the larger parcel? Like, is this intended to be a big office park, or is it intended to be just general uses, trying to see, like, does this fit in?
So for this particular zoning change, really the only dimension that's being changed is the height. The uses in the EDA are all consistent with what's being proposed for Phase 1. The discussion about the remainder of the project, and as you said, we've sort of been running parallel public processes. There's a master plan filing that's currently under review under Article 80. You know, the proposal here is you know, as Sarah mentioned, a catalytic mixed-use development. You know, Tom and Doug are here. If I go off the rails, they can sort of, this is their application. But it is sort of a mix of residential, office, retail, and, you know, 40% of the site, or 25% of the site, excuse me, 25% of the site is going to be open space. So, you know, the Amazon is sort of a big part of this. But there is, you know, this proposal existed before Amazon came through. So what HYM has been proposing is sort of a Plan A and a Plan B. Plan A being if Amazon comes, there'll be slightly more office. Plan B, if Amazon does not choose Boston, slightly more residential. But this is, you know, if you look through the filing, it's a mixed-use project. And again, that's the more precise site plan, the uses, where those uses are going to be part of that wider master plan conversation, which is, you know, again, going through a rigorous Article 80 review.
I guess just to restate my question, when we're setting a new precedent for this little portion of this overall project, is that precedent on the high end of what we anticipate other heights being, or at the low end? That's my question.
So, Jonathan Greeley, Director of Development Review here at the BPDA. So, the site, including both Revere and Boston, is 160 acres. So there is a range of heights contemplated throughout the project. We're currently in the process of evaluating this. This is certainly on the higher end, but there are taller buildings contemplated. One thing that's worth noting is that a significant portion of the site is height restricted due to FAA. So on that portion of the site, you could never get taller than 130 feet anyway, right? So one thing that might be helpful, so next month when you are, there will be a public hearing that will be evaluating just the phase 1 of this, which is a small piece of a much larger project. I think it'll be helpful to have the development team run through a full context of maybe the master plan. So, and you can cite the phase 1 piece in that. It's certainly unique. It's certainly a unique permitting strategy. We think this is a small piece of a larger puzzle aimed at making sure that we are able to maintain our status in the Amazon pursuit, but at the same time, it's had a thorough review process. We've had a number of community meetings, et cetera. So I think that there is a range of uses, heights, significant open space, roads, a ton of work on resiliency happening here. So the goal of tonight was to give you a little bit of a flavor of what is to come, and we anticipate a much denser presentation for you at the next month's board.
Jonathan, what's the highest we could go on this whole 160 acres regarding the FAA?
So the highest portions of the site actually would be in Revere. So if you look at the way the site is, let's call it the northern boundary in Winthrop Avenue, you could get up to 200 feet over there, and it steps down in increments to 130 feet closer to the Suffolk Downs station. So the site is bounded on the east by the Beachmont station on the blue line and the Suffolk Downs station. So the anything over 150 feet or so is likely going to be on the towards the Revere portion of the site.
In Revere or towards Revere?
In Revere.
In Revere.
Yeah.
And I've been to Seattle, but I don't recall. Amazon certainly has a flavor that they like. What's their smallest building out in Seattle? What's their tallest building? Do they tend to like height?
So I think all of the above. So Amazon is certainly concentrated in a particular neighborhood of Seattle. There are some very tall buildings. They lease other spaces. One of the things that's really unique, I think the most important thing to remember about the work that myself, Sarah, Sanal, and others did at the city team evaluating the Amazon proposal, we did a lot of research on this, is that some of these large tech companies, let's say Apple, have an infinite loop. It's one big circle, it's lower scale, but it's very inward facing. Amazon consistently, regardless of what type of building they're in, is a much more outward-facing company. They embrace third-party retail. They want their people to be out and about. And what the really dynamic thing here is the HYM team is also pushing for that type of, that feel that has, that recognizing should Amazon choose to come and occupy the site, that'd be great. But we want corporate tenants of all colors, shapes, and sizes, and we want to make sure they're creating a dynamic mixed-use neighborhood here. So in the same way we've had parts of the city that have become increasingly mixed-use, including the downtown, we want to make sure that we're balancing and outward-facing. We want people on the street. We don't want a bunch of office buildings connected by sky bridges. We want people to walk across the street, occupy it, and I think one of the things you're seeing increasingly about Boston is that you can have a nine-month-a-year outdoor cycle, and one other than maybe a couple of days last week, this is generally a place where you can be outside, and I think the success of the Boston winter outside of City Hall is a great demonstration of that. So, but we look forward to working with Amazon. They are notoriously tight-lipped on what they're looking for, and so I think we look forward to partnering with Amazon here or anywhere else in the city of Boston. They would look to invest in on what their architecture would be, and we'd certainly want to take into account what they want to see, but also very much in account with the spirit and goals that Boston has for individual neighborhoods and the city as a whole.
Certainly, Amazon's not going to negotiate against themselves, but I appreciate the proactiveness of the city. I hope Revere's doing the same thing, and
yes,
we should try and put in place as much as they would like, so it's somewhat shovel-ready in a sense, that we've gotten through a lot of the bureaucracy, which can be pretty thick around here. So we're ready to go when they make that, if they make that decision. Shame on us if we don't.
I would argue that we are certainly a bureaucracy, but a goal-oriented bureaucracy, an outcome-oriented bureaucracy. So thank you for that reminder. The qualifier here is as part of the bid process. They said they would need 500,000 square feet of office space that would be able to be shovel-ready and then built by the end of 2019. Us going through this process allows us to live up to that commitment that was made in the bid last fall. That being said, no work would start on this project until Amazon made a commitment to this site and the city.
Thank you.
And can you talk a little bit about the community reaction to this project?
Sure. So I actually had the fortune of attending a community meeting last night, and we've had 3 workshops and 4 other community meetings. The workshop started before we even had filed the project, where HYM took a range of stakeholders for tours, walked the site. It is quite impressive to be out there, and is actually a place that time forgot almost. It's very much a horse track, and it is increasingly almost a relic of a bygone era. So what are the opportunities here? I think everybody in the community feels is that this is an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for a new neighborhood, but I think also that comes with some concerns about what does that look like. And so there's lots of questions around where are the tall buildings on the site, making sure we respect neighborhood context. How does the site entrance and access off of Bennington Street, and especially not just at Beachmont, but also at Suffolk Downs, and also the connections to 1A. What are traffic implications? The site is committed to 25 acres of open space, 8 acres of which are wetlands. How is that used? How can that be an amenity to everybody, not just somebody who lives or works on the site? How can neighborhood groups take advantage of those open spaces to program, to be active? And so lots of those kinds of questions, also questions about mitigation, right? So how can they improve the traffic in the area? How can we think about support for nonprofits? How can we think about job training? What is the affordable housing opportunity here? We have talked about up to 10,000 units of housing here. That means well over 1,000 will be deed-restricted affordable units. And so there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of great burden here, I think, for both the city and for the development team to think really hard about what we're doing. But I think that's an exciting opportunity, and it's backed up by the work we did in Imagine Boston 2030. So we think we're well on our way to kind of having that conversation. The ultimate master plan will reflect all of those goals and lock in the kind of the overall economic and community objectives that we have here. And so we look forward to having that conversation throughout 2018. And we look forward to being back to you, I'm guessing, multiple times to discuss this project in a range of ways.
Thank you.
Given that this really is the first time we're going to be looking at this particular site, and given its importance within the Imagine Boston 2030 planning process, I want to make sure that when we have our next major presentation on this, that we can get a really thorough look at, particularly at environmental factors, sustainability issues, energy use, connection to the Blue Line, some of the implications of what it will mean, whether Amazon comes or not, in terms of bringing people from this site into town, potential connections at the end of the Blue Line to the Red Line that would facilitate communication between this site and whatever is developed in Cambridge and Kendall Square elsewhere, and particularly because wetlands and the like are involved, and the last couple of weeks have really underlined some of the urgent need for us to plan in ways that address sea level rise and climate change. I want to be sure that that next large hearing addresses those kinds of larger issues.
Absolutely, and it's great the development team is actually here listening to everything you're saying. So you're not only addressing me and the agency, you're addressing that team. So I think they're excited to hear that. Tonight was just viewed as a bit of an appetizer, and so all these are excellent questions, and we look forward to getting into that in much more detail at the public hearing on February 8th. And I would just give a quick anecdote. We had a meeting today where I think we had maybe 10 BPDA staff, 7 or 8 Environment Department staff sitting and just going through resiliency with the development team and thinking about how they're reacting to the 100-year floodplain, elevating the site 40 inches, all in accordance with city policy, thinking about resiliency. So if I had a webcam for that meeting, I would have filmed it and shown you that kind of conversation happening here every single day. We have every competency of this agency working long and hard on this, as is every single department in the city of Boston. So we're really excited about that, and we'll make sure that we touch on all those themes, not only just ones in Imagine Boston 2030, but the stuff that we know that is at our core of a thriving future city.
Is this one of those projects where we would use that new checklist, like that
Yes.
new resiliency checklist and stuff?
Yes.
That would be interesting to kind of see how that's like.
Absolutely.
How that's working,
And they've also committed to every building being LEED Gold or higher, right? So they not only just the site, thinking about resiliency from a site, macro site perspective, but also thinking long and hard about how the individual buildings fit into that context and are resilient of themselves and are environmentally friendly, sustainable, et cetera.
So if there are no further questions, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank
Ayes
you.
have it. Thank you, Jonathan. Item number 7, request authorization to advertise and issue a request for proposals for the 2018 Downtown Waterfront Vending Services Program for the sale of merchandise. Richard.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Paul Hymas, good afternoon and Happy New Year. We are looking for permission to put an RFP out for our merchandise vendors. This is a one-year vending service. Last year, it generated about $140,000 for us, and I think if everybody was safe and on a couch last Thursday, you can understand all the pressure that we have on our waterfront properties, and this money goes right back into maintaining that area. So.
Okay. Do we get much damage down there?
A couple of popped out boards on the Harbor Walk right behind the chart house for the most part. Not really. You know, it's nothing that we didn't anticipate. We've been working diligently with Carolyn Bennett from GIS here to provide some maps from the flooding. It basically followed the 100-year flood plan that we have, probably knock off about 2/3 of it, and that's what we experienced. I think these plans will be, and maps will be invaluable for first responders in the future, and hopefully the MBTA to pre-deploy a lot of assets like sandbags and potentially boats. But, you know, it could be another 40 years, could be every lunar cycle, so we're taking all preparations. And I think you realize, you know, the two lowest spots that we have in the city limits are out on Morrissey Boulevard by the Vietnam Veterans Memorial and the Chart House. You know, those are the two lowest points. They're always impacted. This was, you know, an extraordinary event, historic event, 15-foot tide.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you,
you.
Richard. Item number 8. Request authorization to execute a construction contract with the L&L Contracting for the stairway improvements to the China Trade Building located at 2 Boylston Street in an amount not to exceed $373,000. Paul.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Over the last several years, our main focus and concentration was to get the spaces filled up with tenants and also getting the new heating plant system installed and running, which has been successfully completed. We've also been focusing on the construction and the completion of the Boston Public Library, which, as of yesterday, we just got a C of O, so we're very proud of the accomplishments over there. This project here, it fell on the back burner a little bit. We have 2 egress stairways that are made out of wood. They were originally construction was 1887 of these stairways. So we have some problems with them, not only code-related issues that we have to resolve, but also some of the construction materials have to be replaced, some of the stair stringers, some of the landings, and we have to do a lot of steel reinforcing in order to accommodate the additional loading which the new code requires. So we took care of that. We utilized our consultant, BHA, and we went out to bid in accordance with Chapter 149. We received 3 bids on December 28th, 2017, L&L Contracting, BC Construction, and Northern Contracting. L&L Contracting was the lowest eligible and qualified bidder, and they supplied all the required paperwork certifications. Therefore, we request respectfully to award L&L Contracting the contract for the stair improvement project at the China Trade.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Item number 9. Request authorization to extend the tentative designation of the East Boston Community Development Corporation as redeveloper of 148 through 172 Condor Street in East Boston and to finalize lease negotiations. Maureen.
After an RFP process, including a community meeting, which was in the beginning of 2016, the board awarded tentative designation status to the East Boston Community Development Corporation for the development of the 7-acre parcel at 146 Condor Street in East Boston. The intent of the East Boston CDC is to develop a maritime industrial center consistent with the goals of the RFP, port regulations, and the City of Boston zoning. Tentative designation was extended in both April and July of 2017, and since the last extension of that tentative designation, the East Boston CDC has continued to meet with the prospective maritime dependent tenants. They're finalizing a site plan concept for BPDA review. Final report of the condition of the seawall has been completed. So they're soliciting price quotes to rebuild the seawall, which is an extraordinary feat. They've updated survey and civil engineering reports. They're not completed yet, but they're in progress. The geotechnical report has been finalized. Right now, they're requesting an addition to a 90-day extension of the tentative designation, which would allow them to continue their pre-development due diligence, finalize the estimates of the total development costs, to continue the dialogue with their tenants, allow the BPDA to order a market appraisal of the property, and begin negotiations on the terms and conditions of a long-term ground lease.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 10. Request authorization to issue a scoping determination waiving further review pursuant to Article 80, Section 80B-5.3D of the zoning code. Large project review for the construction of a 159-room hotel with 60 valet parking spaces located at 248 Dorchester Avenue to take all related actions. Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Secretary. The project before you today is located on a 22,000 square foot parcel along Dorchester Ave in South Boston between A Street and B Street. The project site is currently occupied by the one-story Enterprise Rent-A-Center office building with surface parking. As you may recall, in 2015, this board approved a residential project for the site consisting of 33 units, which was never built. On October 2nd, 2017, a project notification form was filed with the BPDA. The new proposal contemplated 87,000 square foot hotel comprised of 159 guest rooms, 15 to 20,000 square feet of neighborhood serving and hospitality amenities, along with at-grade parking for 60 valet parking spaces. The project was well received at both the Impact Advisory Group meeting and the public meeting held on October 30th. The comment period subsequently ended on November 10th. In collaboration with the IAG and local elected officials, the proponent has committed to $65,000 in community benefits to be distributed through the Community Benefits Grant Application process. The proposed project is located within the area covered by Planned South Boston Dorchester Avenue, which was adopted by this board in December of 2016. The proponent has been working closely with the planning department to ensure the project is consistent with the goals and initiatives that were discussed for the Dorchester Avenue and project site. The proponent will contribute a density bonus contribution totaling $150,000 to be used for public realm improvements, affordable retail space, civic, cultural, art space, or 21st century industrial space. If approved, the project will create approximately 320 construction jobs and over 50 permanent jobs. The proponent plans to commence construction in the fourth quarter of 2018 and is estimating completion in the third quarter of 2020. At this time, I would like to introduce Joe Hanley, the proponent's legal counsel, to further the project presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Casey.
Thank you, Casey. Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, Madam Secretary, members of the board, Attorney Joe Hanley, McDermott, Quilty, Miller. Pleased to be here with the development team, Jason Sincata, who's over here from Evergreen Property Group, as well as Michael LeBlanc from UTL Architects, who I will have go through the presentation for you. I just, on behalf of the developer, I'd like to say some words of thanks to the senior staff, the BPDA, to Casey, of course, and John Greeley, Mike Christopher, and we worked very hard with Laura as well as Sarah with respect to the role and substantial compliance of this project within this new planning study area, and with David Carlson and the BCDC as well. As Casey indicated, there's a lot of benefits that we think that will be delivered as part of this project. Most notably the fact that it is the first hotel project and commercial project in the new South Boston Dorchester Avenue planning study area. So we spent a greater part of the last year working very closely with Sarah and Laura and the folks in the planning team, and we're really proud with what we ended up with. We're a little under 100,000 gross square feet, but we still went through the BCDC process as a so-called gateway location in the planning study area. So I think what you'll find is a design-forward hotel that also includes key neighborhood-serving amenities and space. that will very much integrate well with the neighborhood. And Casey, finally, I would say, spoke to job creation, both short and long term, as part of the way that we see the role of this development in the community. We've worked very hard to think about how wages and the job creation will work, not just for the hotel, but for the South Boston community. And as she indicated, 50 hotel jobs, about $3.5 million in annual salaries, probably around $750,000 or so in local City of Boston hotel taxes generated. So we look forward to developing and opening this this neighborhood serving development in this exciting part of South Boston, and appreciate the BPDA staff and the board for all your time on this. With this, I'd like to hand it over to Michael Util to take you through the presentation.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. This will forward for me. Members of the board, Chairman, thank you very much for your time. I just wanted to first start by saying how excited we are about this project, particularly how it dovetails into the recently completed .ev study. And our compliments to the BPDA and the staff members who worked on that. It was an inspiring effort and true community engagement. It was really impressive to watch. So anyway, a few things. I think Casey went through the general stats of the project, so I won't go through that again, but we're really excited about the community benefits this is going to afford. Quick look at the existing site. Currently, the parcel is a surface parking lot with an 1,800 square foot one-story building, which is maybe a little bit of undervalued. And that's not to say that Enterprise isn't a great member of the community there, but it's really just speaking in terms of architecture that the site is a little underdeveloped. We are along we're in .av sort of about a quarter of the way on the way going from Broadway down to Andrews Square. So right about here on the site. And you can see the outline of the Dorchester Ave study here. And so that puts us kind of squarely into the middle of that. We're hoping that being one of the initial projects out of the gate, that we're going to be a good kind of bar setter for the study and developments to come. We took a quick look at the hospitality and mobility characteristics and environment of our site. We're currently really well positioned in terms of our ability to be at the red line, the silver line, getting over to Logan Airport, our access to the highways, to downtown, Back Bay, Harvard Square. We're also happen to be in a bit of all of these pink dots you see here are actually hotel or hospitality locations throughout the city. We're in a little bit of a hospitality desert here, and we think it's going to be a great amenity for the neighborhood. We also have lots of kind of local zip cars, hubways, and bus routes that come through here. So we feel really great about the ability of this project to be very connective. We're also proposing a fleet of bicycles for the guests of the hotel that they can sign out, go off, embark on the rail trails around the city and really kind of participate in the city in a way other than getting in a car. So having looked at all of that, we started to think about what's the best uses for this site. Hotel really came to the top of the pile very quickly, but because we were limited across the front of the site with only 128 linear feet, and knowing that our client and the design team wanted to really pack the site with lots of activity and energy, we decided that gives us an opportunity to sort of start thinking about building on the roof of this building. So what that kind of results in is a building that looks something like this. We've got a building that goes up to 70 feet, then it sets back per the guideline, the study guidelines. And then we are proposing a lantern on top, which is a rooftop restaurant and event space with an outdoor roof deck, which will all be publicly accessible. So it's a way of getting more retail and energy on this site when we have a very limited amount of site at Dorchester Avenue. We are, however, thinking about really activating Dorchester Ave with retail along the entire ground floor along Dorchester Ave as well. Just to quickly show you how the site lays out, we're on a kind of triangular parcel. This is Ave, West 5th Street here, the Hall Road, which is about 18 feet down from our site. And we are proposing about 5,000 square feet of retail and hotel lobby along the front of the site, off-street loading behind, parking, which will be enclosed in the back of that, and a single point of access for vehicles, really trying to pack out as much activity along Dorchester Ave as we can. On the upper floors, the second floor over the first floor plinth will be an occupiable roof, and then you can see the sort of typical floor where the hotel rooms are, and we're really excited about how those rooms are kind of shaping up. And then on the top level, above the 70-foot mark, we've got that roof deck here. We see this as kind of evening entertainment. We see this as daytime entertainment or family entertainment here, and then the restaurant in the middle, and then one floor up from that, the event spaces for community gatherings, small weddings, maybe even local community meetings, things like that, conferences. Just so you can see how that all kind of lays out in terms of the massing, just a quick kind of look at that. And one of the things we really wanted to do, as I was saying earlier, is activating Dorchester Avenue. We took a hard look at the newly proposed guidelines for streetscapes along Dorchester Ave. Having been the authors of the Complete Streets guidelines for the city of Boston, along with the staff of the BPDA, we took a look at this, and this varies very slightly, but we actually love the improvements here. The main improvement really is getting bikes up onto the sidewalk and not being in the street, so they can really be separate from the cars, and that gives a really much more meaningful bike lane there. So we've been able to do that. This is a quick look at how we're activating that ground floor. Just about the entire stretch of that is active hotel lobby plus restaurant. There is one vehicle entrance that you can see right here, and otherwise we've got a really well-designed front here, which I'll show you a little more in a moment. Just to show you how this works, we've got our 2-foot buffer for signage, our tabled or elevated bike path here. We've got a really nice buffer of a planting strip with trees in it, our pedestrian walkway here, and then we do have some outdoor table seating and dining out here, an entry into the lobby right here. So, and then the vehicle access right there. Just a quick look at how that works in section. You can see how generous this sidewalk section is here. We are slightly elevated up just to get ourselves to a first floor elevation, which is going to keep us out of any storm surge or tidal rise or anything like that. We're really happy about that. Jason's a young client. He's going to be around for a long time, and we want to make sure his building is functioning well for him many years to come. And so this is just a very quick look at how we're dealing with that bike lane, that planter strip here. We've got a great seating bench along almost the entire length of this, our entry here, pedestrian sidewalk, and then our table and dining seating outside. Rooftop lounge and event, one of the parts of the project we're really excited about. This is a quick example of the kind of spaces we're talking about. Small, intimate, but really great vantage point. We have the bus terminal just across Dorchester Ave from us, and beyond that, we've got really unfettered views to the Back Bay, which we're really excited about. So kind of turning what was maybe less of maybe a little bit of a challenge to the site into a great amenity for the site. So a quick look at what that might look like up here. You can see what we're calling the lantern up above. This shows the continuity of the indoor space at the restaurant to the outdoor terrace here, looking off to the Back Bay and to downtown. And so we're really excited about this amenity. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That concludes your presentation, Joe?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any questions from the board? No questions?
Oh, I did have a question. I was just curious on that bike lane. I think it's really cool, but is that just in front of the building, or does it go all the way like through the street, or is that just kind of?
For the moment, it will be just in front of our building. What we're hoping is that as the parcels on either side of us begin to develop, that they will kind of lock into those dimensions, which are really previously set by the study. It can be used in such a way that if you're coming along the sidewalk and you need to shift up, we have the entire pathway from the site on either side of us through our walkway or through our site is completely accessible. We have no more than 2% slopes anywhere along that sidewalk there. So.
Okay. And it sounds like you had a great collaboration with incorporating this with Imagine 2030 and the .av plan. Can you just give a little bit more context on like how this fits in with the bigger picture for that, for that strip
Sure. As we understand it, so I won't presume to totally understand the study, but as we understand it, the .av study really is a way to bolster additional housing, and particularly affordable housing in the city of Boston. As that strip develops, we were concerned that that kind of new robust development of housing is going to really require additional what we call like supplementary or ancillary uses. Hotel seems to be a great ancillary use for that. We can put the hotel here and be confident that it's going to work well. People flying in from other cities aren't going to have a kind of keen understanding of the landscape of the city. They're going to come, they're going to visit the hotel, they're going to see the amenities, they'll be there. But it also offers amenities for the existing residents as well as the forthcoming residents there. We think it's the kind of project which is a great kind of supplemental use, and will also, we hope, will catalyze additional residential development along this strip. So, did I answer that?
Yeah, I don't know if you just want to.
Yeah, I can. So I have laryngitis, so don't mind me. It doesn't hurt, but just sounds awful. So just, I think Michael gave a good background of what we were thinking with the plan .av. As you know, Dorchester Avenue in South Boston was predominantly a job center in its heyday. And so there's a lot of industrial uses there, and a lot of storage uses for construction materials and so forth. So this area has really got the opportunity to grow into not just that job center, but into a housing center as well. So we do anticipate to have a good mix in the plan. In the community, we're very excited about the idea of mixing housing and many of the commercial uses that could be on it as well. When it comes to their dimensional guidelines, the placemaking of this property, of this project, is exactly what the community had discussed within the process. Really thinking of a way to make it a 24-hour community, 7 days a week, something that they can walk from Andrew Square to Broadway, and actually have sidewalks, and take their bikes along around .av and hopefully our new streets. So the guidelines really have asked for the projects to really come together in a form-based code is what kind of we talk about. So really thinking about the building as what are its setbacks, what does its ground plane really provide to the community and particularly the pedestrian environment. So this is the first stage, and I really do commend them for being extremely patient with us through this process, and developing a project that fits into what the community envisions for the area, but also setting the stage for other developments to follow suit to make sure that we're making these networks, these bike networks, street networks, and pedestrian networks.
Go ahead.
Joe, first, spectacular. I mean, never envisioned something like that on .av. But that second, is the bridge, the old bridge that went over the Hall Road that's gone now, has anything happened with that?
I'm not sure. The connector of the bridge on the side, I mean, it's something that came up in the IAG discussion, and clearly our client would love to see, there's some obstructions there and the infrastructure improved as part of the overall development there.
Right. And the Hall Road, can cabs go on that portion of the Hall Road? I don't know if it was just for...
Yeah.
I mean, coming from the airport,
yeah.
If you could get on, cabs can go on that Hall Road. I mean, that's a direct shot right to the airport, to and
Right.
from, to that hotel.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
So through the planning process, the area has minimal street network. So what we have, what the plan that you guys have adopted, does memorialize an idea of adding streets and connecting into the Hall Road at a later date. The MBTA, as well as Mass Highway, was very involved in our conversations, and it's in preliminary design stage, but we're hoping that with some of the funding that's come in through other projects, when we move into the transportation study, that the engineering will be done to think about the Hall Road as a multi-purpose access point.
Because you can get on the Hall Road right there, right?
You can.
Yeah.
I did it last night.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. So that's definitely something that's been contemplated.
Can you talk about the public access to the roof deck? You're calling that a public amenity, what does that mean actually? Does that mean someone can walk in off the street and take the elevator up to the roof and hang out and look at the city? Or is it more a group of people could rent it out? Like, what does it mean exactly to have public access to that roof?
I think both of what you just described. I think it should be thought of as though it's a restaurant. The same kind of public access that could be had there. On the main floor, which is the restaurant floor, which is where also the roof deck is. The floor above that is, think of it more like a conference center or an event space. That is something that you would call ahead and lease out for an event or an occasion that you were having. So I think that's.
Yeah, and if you look in the board memo, I think Casey had indicated this too. South Boston has the, I think, somewhat unique and beneficial aspect of being very nonprofit driven, right? And so we've also committed to work with nonprofits to make that space available. Hotels are obviously a place of public accommodation, but if you look at the way that roof plan works, it's very much intended to be a spot for hospitality for people in the neighborhood. Here in the lower end section of South Boston, where this is located, there's been a lot of growth, but a lot of those opportunities are private. Like, for example, the McAllen building is a great deck, but it's for the residents only. So what we want to do is provide an opportunity for folks in the neighborhood to come up and enjoy that and utilize it, and also take advantage of the event space, which isn't huge by convention standards, but is big enough to accommodate a birthday party or a retirement party and things like that that might happen in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
I would just add to that too, that within this planning study, we one of the things we've been working on is this density bonus strategy, and one of those aspects of it was to have some community space. This team actually had the community space prior to us doing the study in their proposal. So this is definitely something that the community was very happy for. We can certainly maybe hold some BPDA public meetings there one day.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations. Good luck. Item number 11. Request authorization to issue a scoping determination waiving further review pursuant to Article 80, Section 80B-5.3D of the Zoning Code for large project review for the construction of 54 residential units, including 10 IDP units and 41 garage parking spaces located at 20 West 5th Street, to recommend approval to the Board of Appeal for the necessary zoning relief and to take all related actions. Aisling.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Chairman, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, members of the board. Located just one block behind the 248 Dorchester Avenue project, which the board just saw, is this proposed project at 20 West 5th Street, which also falls within the planned South Boston Dorchester Avenue strategic planning area, and is located a short 5-minute walk from the Broadway MBTA station. The proponent, Trinity Green Development, LLC, filed a letter of intent with the Boston Planning and Development Agency on April 28, 2017, and subsequently filed a project notification form on June 14, 2017. The proposed project includes the demolition of the existing structure on site and the construction of a new 6-story, approximately 78,432 square foot residential building to contain approximately 54 residential units, approximately 2,184 square feet of common room space, a first-level parking garage for approximately 41 vehicles. Of the 54 total proposed units, 10 of these units will be IDP units. I'd like to thank the members of the Impact Advisory Group of this project for their service and commitment to our city and their neighborhood. In working with the IAG, the proponent has committed to a community benefits package totaling $100,000. $75,000 of this total contribution will be made to the Boston Public Works Department for the expansion of the existing sidewalks around Broadway Station. The remaining $25,000 will be made available for services for residents in the South Boston neighborhood and will be allocated through a BPDA application for community benefits process. Through this project's Article 80 review process, the BPDA hosted a first IAG in public meeting on July 11th, 2017 at the Condon Community Center in South Boston. A scoping session for city and state officials was also held on July 11th, while the public comment period concluded on July 28, 2017. A second IAG meeting was held on November 29th, 2017, also at the Condon Community Center, at which the members of the Impact Advisory Group responded positively to the project and proposals set forth by the proponent. The proposed project is seeking zoning relief for several variances. BPDA staff believe that the proposed project is consistent with the planned South Boston Dorchester Avenue guidelines that this board has adopted. After considerable design review, the requested variances are appropriate for the proposal. At this point, I'd like to introduce Tim Russell, project architect and proponent.
Okay, thank you. You could use the microphone?
Oh, sure.
Because
my name's Tim Russell. I'm only up here because I wear two hats. I'm a partner in the development. My other partner is Tom Broderick. I'm also one of the architects in the project. The project architect is Nick Capone, sitting back there. This is an easy presentation for me because, again, we're one block back from the hotel site that we just spoke about. We are not on Dorchester Avenue. We're on West Fifth Street, so that it was appropriate for us to have more of a residential building with no commercial component. I'd like to kind of add in the beginning, we're kind of early adopters. My partner and I, the same development team, developed a 33-unit building that goes from Middle Street to Woodward Street on the Dorchester Avenue. It's the modern building, kind of in the middle of the block. So we kind of stuck our toe in before it was popular. This is the existing site right here, the existing building, Gold Street. Will be relative to your bridge question. The Gold Street section of this property dead ends at the Hall Road. We are going to do a taking of Gold Street and use that as the driveway access to our property so that we don't have any garage doors on any sort of a main street. And additionally, the back half of Gold Street will be converted into open space. You can see that on here. This is West Fifth Street and Gold Street adjacent to it. The one thing we wanted to focus on, I think, is similar hotel, is that we were reading the drafts of the BPDA document more or less the day they came out, and I think it was a helpful iterative process between us and the staff is to determine what the particulars were and what the intent were. We're in a zone where we're allowed 100% lot coverage and 120 foot of height. We are only at 70 feet. We felt that was more appropriate because the McCallum building and some of the A Street development going down to Broadway Station, those are all terminate at 70 feet. We felt like we were more of an appropriate transition from the 70 to the 120. Again, this is the existing building. There's a series of curb cuts along West Fifth Street, which will be closing and rebuilding the sidewalk. This is the apartment building across the street, and to the right of the screen would be the hotel site we just spoke of. This is the Gold Street. This will be the entrance to the property. Gold Street will be abandoned. We'll widen it, table it, and use the first half as our driveway, which we will share with the Mass Bay Credit Union, and then the back half will become open space. Again, this is the back of the site looking at the Hall Road. This is the existing condition site plan, and this is the proposed site plan. That's my pointer work here. Never mind. As you can see, the site is first floor garage. You can see the entrance coming down Gold Street, and you can see the open space at the rear. Additionally, you can see this is currently an 8-foot sidewalk. We're expanding it to 10 feet, and then expanding an area of, expanding an area in front of the building for bike storage and an entry portico. This is the front elevation of the building. Again, we've tried to modulate the massing of the building into vertical pieces, which more or less break up the massing of the building. And again, there's an indentation and a stair tower, which allows for additional landscaping space to be done on a second floor roof terrace. This photo is kind of interesting because at 40, I think 40 or 45 feet, you have to indent the building 15 feet and then go up to 70 and indent again. So what we've done is we've kind of used that as kind of an aesthetic where the end of the building we think looks kind of nice the way it kind of, you know, breaks in and out. We're still doing the 15-foot setback on Gold Street, although it's not technically a street anymore. Again, this is a view of the front entrance of the building, adding street trees, bricks along the pavement, bricks along the edge of the street, expanding the sidewalk from 8 foot to 10 foot, and then having this bike area and entry area at the front of the building. It's another shot of it. That's the current view of the site, and this is the rendering of the proposed site. That's it. Again, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I'm trying to be brief.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board?
What are the facade materials? Could you go back to the last elevation there?
Could you go over to the microphone?
Sorry about that. I knew he could hear me. The facade is a combination of masonry at the first floor, and then a combination of different materials of rain screen above the floor. Given the lead requirements, we feel like a rain screen type of system is it'll be a combination of ceramic panels, which some will manipulate, will manifest themselves as like a gray stone, and others as more of a tan or wood material. The glazing and the spandrel glass, again, in between there would be the same thing, same kind of materials, but.
And there's a lead standard that you aspire to meet here?
We're aspiring to gold, yes.
Are there any further questions? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations. Item number 12, request authorization to issue a partial certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E, Small Project Review of the Zoning Code for the revised plan to construct 12 residential units, including 2 IDP units, and 11 off-street parking spaces at the building located at 211 Condor Street and within the 187 through 191 and 211 Condor Street project, and to take all related actions. Raul.
Good evening, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, members of the board. The item before you this evening is a revised plan to the 211 Condor Street building located in the Eagle Hill section of East Boston. This building is part of a larger overall project known as the 187-191 and 211 Condor Street development that was previously approved by the board on June 15, 2017. The building located at 211 Condor Street was originally approved by the board as a 4-story, approximately 16,600 square foot residential building that would include 14 residential units and approximately 14 off-street parking spaces. After the project received both BPDA and ZBA approval, further study revealed that a portion of the parcel was subject to Chapter 91 under Massachusetts general laws. In order to satisfy the requirements of Chapter 91, the proposed building has been subsequently pulled back from the edge of Condor Street and away from the waterfront along Chelsea River. As a result, 3 main aspects of the project changed, and they are reduction of 2 units, bringing the new unit count to 12. The number of parking spaces was reduced by 3, bringing the new parking count to 11. And approximately 2,600 square feet of gross floor area was reduced from the previously approved project, resulting in a 13,900 square foot building. It's also important to note that all of the previously agreed upon community benefits, mitigation, and IDP commitments have remained the same. I'm joined by Mark Lacasse, counsel for the development team, to answer any questions you may have and to walk you through the changes, if you like.
Okay, thank you, Raul. Did you want to continue with the presentation?
Only if there are some questions from the board
okay, yeah.
regarding why this change was precipitated and how it came about.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board?
My question is why we didn't know about the Chapter 91 to begin with, I guess.
Yes, which is exactly the question I would expect. It is frequently the case that the zoning subdistrict lines on the zoning maps are coterminous with the Chapter 91 delineation for wetlands lines, but on Condor Street in this section of East Boston, they are not. They're close, but not quite. And the not quite part is about 5 to 14 feet across the front of this particular parcel as compared to the zoning subdistrict line, which runs down the center line of Condor Street. On the Chelsea River side of the subdistrict line is waterfront. On the landward side of the subdistrict line is multifamily residential and the other zoning uses that are permitted. But the Chapter 91 line scoots a little closer to the landward side and across the front of 211 Condor in a range of 5 to 14 feet. So we had to lop off a portion of the front of the building to dedicate it as open space because you can't have any structures on Chapter 91 filled tidelands that are not water dependent. And why it didn't come about is in part because the two maps are different, and we proceeded through this entire process on the basis of a zoning review set of plans and drawings for this board. But then when it advanced to the next stage and got into the nitty-gritty, one of the civil engineers raised the question, and lo and behold, the maps are not the same in this case.
Do you just quickly have a map of where it is?
Sure
I just
thing.
need to.
So there is Condor Street, 211 is shown. Across the street is the Chelsea River. The other part of this project is 187 Condor, 187-191 Condor, which is, you see the Chelsea River curves. So the Chapter 91 delineation does not impact that property, but it does impact the front of 211 Condor.
I guess my question is, where does the responsibility reside for somebody knowing about it? I guess that's my question. Does it reside with us? Does it reside with the developer? Like, whose responsibility is it to know?
I think a little bit
Or
of
have
everybody.
accurate maps, or?
Yeah, I think a little bit of everybody. I did speak with internal staff here at the BPDA who explained to me that it is frequently the case that the Chapter 91 map and the zoning maps are contiguous and usually are. But again, in this particular instance, they're not. So I guess the short answer is it was an honest mistake on many fronts that we didn't catch it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank
Thank
you
you
very
so
much.
much.
Item number 13. Request authorization to enter into a second amendment to the land disposition agreement for parcel CE 13 in the South End Urban Renewal Area, and to amend the property description to remove a portion of parcels SE 13 and to enter into a new land disposition agreement for the carved-out portion to allow for the development of a previously approved One Newcomb Place project. Allison.
Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. Before you is a recommendation that the director be authorized to enter into 1, a second amendment to the land disposition agreement for parcel SE 13, and 2, a new land disposition agreement on the subdivided portion of parcel SE 13 and the adjacent parcel by and between the Boston Planning and Development Agency and 11 Newcomb Street LLC, allowing for the development of the previously approved One Newcomb Place project located within the South End Urban Renewal Plan Project, number Mass R56.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Allison. We're going to move to item number 15, and we'll come back to the public hearing at 5:30. Item number 15 is request authorization to disperse $100,000 to the Community Resources for Justice to support the services of Brookhouse, with funding from the Longwood Research Institute Fund, and to enter into a grant agreement. Sanel?
Good evening, good afternoon, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Madam Secretary, Director Golden. As you mentioned, I'm here today to request authorization to disperse $100,000 from the Longwood Research Institute Impact Fee Fund to Community Resources for Justice to support the services of Brook House, a residential reentry center located in the Fenway neighborhood. Brook House has been providing residential reentry services for over 50 years to people currently incarcerated, offenders on parole or probation, and those recently released from prison who would otherwise be homeless. Today, the Brook House services 18 individuals, each of whom is nearing the end of their prison sentence or were just released. Their expected length of stay is 4 or more months. Brook House has the funding for 7 of the individuals at this point, and this grant will allow for the remaining 11 to be funded through this time.
Okay, thank you, Sanel. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 16. We're going to do informational budget updates. Michelle.
Hello, good afternoon. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, Director Golden, I am Michelle Goldberg, the Budget and Procurement Manager. It is my pleasure to present to you the FY17 end of year and FY18 operating and capital budget update this evening. I'm joined by our controller, Bob Luisi. We have a few slides to present to you, and we will be happy to take questions at the end.
Okay.
I guess I need to click here. So we'll walk through FY17 end of year, then we'll talk about the first quarter, and then a quick capital budget update. FY17 was a favorable year for the BPDA. On the revenue side, there are 2 key items that had material impact. First, the early payment of the Zoom lease, reflected in rental and leases category, which was collected earlier than previously anticipated. Second, the grant income saw higher revenue than anticipated. Some of this is due to conservative assumptions around OWD funding, but this category also includes the intercompany grant that EDIC sends to the BRA. The intercompany grant was higher than anticipated because of increased investments in the China trade building. Further down on this table, you will see the complementing increase in expenses in the contractual services category. These favorable variances were slightly offset by lower than expected equity participation. This category uses previous years as a foundation for the projection. FY16 was a high-performing year, and FY17 showed a decline. You will see later on that this was taken into consideration when building FY18, which has a more modest projection. Overall, FY17 revenue was driven by the Zoom deal and the increase in the intercompany grant. On the expense side, there are a few key variances worth explaining. The budget and accounting team have been refining categorization practices and are starting to see those changes at the summary level. In our FY17 second quarter update, we mentioned that we had identified expenses, specifically YO stipends, that were charged to the personnel line that were actually budgeted in a non-personnel line. This was corrected in FY18, but is the main driver of that negative variance you see here in the personnel line. The BPDA saw a favorable variance in employee benefits due to post-retirement health expenses. That budget is based on projections for future year costs, and ultimately actual costs came in lower than anticipated. The next category, administrative services, also reflects a favorable variance due largely to savings in data processing and small variances across that category. As mentioned earlier, because we are looking at the BRA and EDIC from a combined perspective, the increase in the intercompany grant shown in grant revenue is connected to the increased spending in contractual services. So if OWD had conservative revenue projections and received more funds than anticipated, they will have higher spending than expected to spend down that revenue. Furthermore, if the BRA spends more on China trade, it will require additional funds from the intercompany grant, which is an expense for the EDIC. Overall, that $5.6 million variance that we see is the result of those 2 trends. For property management, several factors were at play. In order to complete the China Trade project, we had to finish up depreciating the last round of projects at that site, so we had a higher than anticipated depreciation expense. We also had a faster than expected increase in occupancy, which meant higher than anticipated security costs and broker fees. Coupling those trends with a few unrelated decisions around increasing the reserves for future bad debt, this category saw a sizable variance. Thankfully, these were all one-time expenses. We do not anticipate this becoming a trend in future years. Now on to FY18 first quarter. FY18 marks the second year of a multi-year effort to improve budget and accounting practices. This year also has a complementing budget book, so hopefully that will add great context to the numbers you see before you. One question posed at our budget presentation last year was, where do we plan to go next? Once we achieve our goals around combining the BRA and EDIC and rethinking categorizations of funds. Well, seasonality is one of those areas. The first quarter includes July, August, and September. Those months tend to see the second half of the summer activities and transition into fall. So, for example, cruise activity is high, but we don't see much snow removal, thankfully. So the variances we see here have to be reviewed in the context of seasonality, and we are working to build out monthly budgets to reflect those more accurately. So the cruise parking and rental and leases helped create that $800,000 variance we see, but it's still early in the year. The equity participation and sale of real estate variances are expected to level out as the year goes on. And again, we see the relationship between grant income and contractual services. Not as much contractual services spending happening down in expenses means not as much grant income activity. Once you adjust for that, we have a roughly $600,000 favorable variance in revenue, but we are aware it's early in the year. On the expense side, all of the variances are modest given the time of year and their annual budgets. I would note here that the BPDA had budgeted for an agency-wide headcount of 242 employees with 18 employment service contractors. As of the last pay period of December, which is the second quarter, there were 232 active employees and 12 employee service contractors. We tend to see slow hiring in the first half of the year and have had some attrition related to retirements and departures. We currently have 7 positions posted and several vacancies that we intend to post in the near future. That 242 budgeted headcount only included 3 brand new positions, so we are working hard to monitor our headcount and be strategic with where we fill them. Next, I would like to briefly present a summary of our capital spending. It's important to note this is as of the end of December. We're able to provide slightly more timely numbers in this category. Our budget book has details regarding all of the projects behind these numbers, but we are happy to be wrapping up the China Trade project and to be investing in the parking garage and the EDIC Raymond L. Flynn Industrial Park. Several of the projects outside are outlined in the budget book, and they help address infrastructure affected by maritime environment along the water's edge. Indeed, the impact of recent flooding and king tides are examples of why this work is so critical. The city is partnering with us in some of these efforts, and we have a 10-year capital plan that aims to maintain and improve our infrastructure. With that, I'd like to thank the accounting team as well as the budget and accounts payable team for the ongoing efforts to provide the board with and the public with this information. And Bob and I are happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board?
Okay, I can start. Well, I'm actually going to start by saying I don't have questions. Michelle, you just killed that. This was a really, really awesome presentation, and just to see the progress. That, I get so excited about finance and accounting when this is like my favorite presentation of the year.
Glad we have a happy audience.
But to see just the evolution of how this deck has come, and we're through the reclasses, we know where everything is going, and you were very well prepared.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate the being able to, in a very concise manner, make this make sense without with just hearing what you're saying.
Thank
right?
you.
So great context and just phenomenal job. I know it's a team effort.
Yeah, Bob was
but-
a huge part of making this happen. So
But
credit goes to him.
congratulations.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, I have one question. There are recently passed revisions to the tax code, and while I don't expect that there would be any direct impacts on what we do in our operations, I'm curious as to whether there was any sense of kind of secondary impacts that might occur or take place because of changes in the real estate market, or what's deductible, or those kinds of factors.
Sure. You know, Bob, if you have anything to add, let me know. But I would say from a very high level, we understand that the economy has ups and downs, and I think we've learned a lot of lessons from the last Great Recession. And, you know, all of the things that we're doing here, investing in our infrastructure, monitoring our headcount, and compiling meaningful data is going to put us in a position to make wise decisions and start to, you know, make ourselves sustainable so that we can survive the booms and busts. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah. Nothing offhand that I could think of that's a boom. Yeah, either.
I have a question on the capital expenditures for the property and everything. Are we spending a sufficient amount for considering the size and the amount of properties we have and the size of our agency? Is that a sufficient amount? And also, is there a capital reserve fund that we have?
Sure. I think Bob might be able to speak at length about that.
Good evening. In terms of the capital budget, one of the exercises that we are taking on as an agency is we're trying to look further down the road than just this year, next year, and the year after. We're developing a much more longer-term look into sustainable revenue and what we need to kind of bring back into the asset sections of what sustains us. So we know the property is important. It's on the waterfront. Right now, property management has developed a book with probably $200 million of identified structure improvements we need to make over the next probably 10 years or so. So that and the changes in implementation of 2030 are both key elements that we have to understand better and try to roll into fiscal forecasting so that we can make good long-term planning decisions. And so that's the next step for us.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you. Are there any other further questions? Well, thank both of you for making that presentation. We appreciate it. And I know you put a lot of work and effort into it, and it's still evolving, the whole process of having this public discussion about our budget. And we appreciate it. And thank your staff for us, too. Thank you. Okay, item number 17, contractual. We need a motion to pay the bills.
I move we pay our bills.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 18, personnel. Trent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Trent.
members of the board,
Trent.
Madam
Trent.
Secretary and Director Golden. I just have one agenda for your approval, the designation of Carol Downs as a member of the Community Preservation Committee. Details are listed in your board memo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Trent.
Thank you.
Item number 19, Director's Update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the members. First up, the 50 Liberty project at Fan Pier is a Fan Pier in the Seaport is a 3 million square foot mixed-use development with a 13,000 square foot dedicated civic and cultural space. The BPDA is working with the developer, the Fallon Company, to seek letters of interest from potential users of this cultural and civic space. Proposals are due on the 2nd of February, and appropriate uses for this space might be a library, a museum, a gallery space, a concert hall, an auditorium, a historical exhibit, or some other kind of community center. We certainly look forward to these submissions next month, and a new use that helps create a special place and contributes to the soul of the seaport. Second, back in the fall, you authorized the issuance of a request for proposals by the agency for one of its parcels at parcel 12 on Tremont Street. It's down near the Wang Center and Tufts Medical in the Theater District. It's a parking lot that the BPDA has owned and controlled for a long period of time. The RFP was issued. We have received one response to that RFP. What we spec'd out in that RFP was an array of aspirations, and one very sophisticated team has responded to that. The team is a collaboration of the Asian CDC, Millennium Boston, Corcoran Jennison, and Tufts Medical. Just to remind you, the RFP contemplated the potential for a use that would benefit, provide parking benefits for the neighborhood, also a significant amount of affordable housing for the neighborhood, and the potential for an increase in hotel space in the neighborhood. So this team has, in a collaborative fashion, responded. We look forward to conversations internally within the agency and externally with the neighborhood in the weeks to come. Finally, I want to say, I think we all want to say a word of gratitude, appreciation, and farewell to Lara Merida. Lara, a couple weeks ago, accepted a position with the planning department in New York City. Lara's been with us for almost 10 years, just under 10. She's been serving that entire time after completing her graduate program at Tufts. In urban planning, she's worked at the agency as a planner, but for most of the past several years, as you have all come to know her, she's been Deputy Director of Planning for Community Planning. And in that capacity, not only has Lara been working details in the neighborhoods, but with regard to both macro and surgical strategic planning efforts, but she's overseen teams in multiple neighborhoods. On your watch, we've seen the JP Rocks plan come to fruition along Washington Street between Eggleston and Forest Hills. We've seen the Dorchester Ave planning study in South Boston completed. Been working on the Plan Dudley effort and Glover's Corner. Before that, Lara worked on a host of planning efforts, both downtown and in our neighborhoods. She's had a profound effect within the agency, helping to develop a super competent and high-achieving staff in the planning division. She's been a really important collaborator across divisional lines, and ultimately that has yielded tremendous benefits for the agency in the way it functions on behalf of the people of Boston, but also has in fact helped plan and develop healthier, more equitable, and thriving neighborhoods for the city of Boston. So we thank Lara for the excellent work she's done for the agency, for the excellent work she's done for the people of Boston. She's certainly helped create better neighborhoods and a better Boston for all. So thanks and good luck, Lara. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're going to miss you, but I know you're still going to be a Red Sox fan, even though you're working in the... Take all that back, Brian. Okay, well, congratulations. We're going to miss you, but very happy for you. That's a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah,
wow.
Again, this was a surprise, and I saw it in the board memo, and I think you know, congratulations, but like, thank you for the work that you've done here. I think as I've learned a lot from watching you at meetings here, and your professionalism, composure, and compassion and empathy. I think it's just something that the city, I personally, and so many people have really been. We've just been privileged to work with you. So, congratulations.
Okay, well, we're going to have to take a brief recess until 5:30 for the hearing to start. That's when we publicized that that would happen, so we have to wait until then. So we'll be in recess. Man, she's going really This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority, doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, and is being held to consider, 1, the housing creation proposal as submitted by Children's Hospital, Inc. and Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services. This public hearing is required by the guidelines of the housing creation regulations. This public hearing was duly advertised on December 29, 2017 in the Boston Herald. In a BPDA hearing, staff will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the BPA Board Authority. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed development will be afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents will be allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal if they so desire. I would ask that people limit their comments to 2 minutes and to the subject of the hearing today, the housing creation proposal only. Dana will now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Golden, and Secretary Paul Hemus. We are here this evening to take under consideration the housing creation proposal as submitted by Children's Hospital and the Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services. There is a very brief presentation about the project that is going to be supported by this housing creation proposal, which is the Parcel 25 Phase 2. I'll say a few things about it right now, which is to say that it is an affordable housing project that will create 46 affordable rental units, all of which will be affordable at area median incomes of 30%, 60%, and 50%. So it's an all affordable housing unit. It's going to create a significant amount of pedestrian walkway and experience that will enliven the Gurney Street area and the Roxbury Crossing area. More about that later from the architects, but the significance of the creation of new affordable housing in this district is very important. A couple of words about a housing creation proposal, very briefly. A development entity like Children's Hospital works with a housing developer, in this case Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services, to submit a proposal that enables them to utilize the linkage funds associated with their project to create new affordable housing units within a district. The housing creation process is managed jointly by the BPDA, our sister agency, the Department of Neighborhood Development, and the City of Boston Treasury to ensure that the appropriate amounts are received and applied appropriately. As part of this process, we also receive a recommendation vote from the Neighborhood Housing Trust, which actually manages the linkage funds process associated with housing. A couple of words about the Children's Hospital project that is associated with this particular proposal. It is the clinical building that received its approvals and zoning action support in December of 2013, and also the corresponding development impact project agreement that informs this particular transaction. The housing creation proposal itself was submitted on September 26th by Children's Hospital and Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services to utilize up to approximately $1.2 million to support Parcel 25 Phase 2. I mentioned earlier the level of affordability that's going to be coming out of this particular project, and also would note that there's a great deal of community and stakeholder support for this particular development, and also this particular phase of the development represents forward momentum because Phase 1 is already has been completed and in full occupancy. You'll hear more about that momentarily. That also includes 100% affordable rental units. So the creation of a supply of housing that is desperately needed in this part of the city is a very good story, and we're thankful, obviously, that Children's Hospital and Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services have been able to collaborate in this creative way to make that happen. The total development cost for this project, Parcel 25 Phase 2, is approximately $21 million. Again, staff from the BPDA, DND, and the City of Boston Treasury have reviewed this proposal and approved it, and the Department of Neighborhood Housing, the Department of Neighborhood Development worked with the Neighborhood Housing Trust to approve a housing trust vote on December 14th. In addition to support from community, I have two letters, one from at-large Councillor S.I.B. George and at-large Councillor Presley, that I'll provide to you as well for the record. With that, I will stop this part of the presentation and acknowledge the presence of my colleague Ryan Lundergan from Department of Neighborhood Development. For the rest of the presentation on the proposal itself, I will acknowledge the presence of pardon me, Lisa Hogarty, who is I didn't want to get the name wrong, Senior Vice President for Real Estate Development with Children's Hospital, as well as Patricia Flaherty, who's the Executive Director for Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services. Lisa.
Okay, thank you, Dana.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. I'm Lisa Hogarty, Senior Vice President of Real Estate Planning Development for Boston Children's Hospital, and I'm here on behalf of the hospital's senior leadership to say that Boston Children's is pleased to commit up to $1.25 million from the Children's Hospital Housing Exaction in support of Phase 2 of Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services Parcel 25 project. As you know, this comes on the heels of an earlier payment of $1.34 million to close the financing gap on Phase 1 of this affordable housing development. As I believe you also know, both of these housing creation agreements are somewhat unusual because while we've received city approval for the clinical building that's generating these housing linkage funds, the hospital has not yet received its building permit. Boston Children's is choosing to do so for several reasons. We know that Boston is experiencing a serious shortage of affordable housing that needs immediate attention. We're directly witnessing the impact of that shortage in the rise of housing unstable and homeless patient families, so we see them on a daily basis in the hospital. And we know that stable, affordable housing is a necessary precondition to the overall health and well-being of our patient families. But we're also making this investment because as an anchor institution in Boston, Boston Children's recognizes that we have a role to play in the health and well-being of the broader community. And finally, we're choosing to make this investment because Boston Children's has long benefited from having Pat Flaherty and Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services as an active, engaged community partner and advisor. We're witnessing their decades-long commitment to providing affordable housing that stabilizes families and the Mission Hill community. So we're proud to partner with NHS on this project and look forward to continuing to work with them in the years to come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Members of the board, Director Golden, thank you for the opportunity to once again present to you about our projects in Roxbury Crossing and Mission Hill. My name is Patricia Flaherty. I'm the Executive Director for Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services. We're the CDC, the Community Development Corporation in Mission Hill. In addition to Lisa Hogarty, we have John Reardon from Children's with us tonight, and we have Rob Chandler from Goody Clancy, our design team, and he'll walk you through our presentation in a few moments. I wanted to say that Children's Hospital has stepped forward with a housing creation commitment to Parcel 25 Phase 2 project that continues a long and deep commitment to the provision of affordable housing in the Mission Hill neighborhood, a recognition by the hospital that the lack of affordable housing is a critical determinant of public health. I think I was saying earlier that my first conversations back in the 80s when we were first talking about linkage and housing creation were with Rudd Ham at Children's saying, how are we going to make sure some of this linkage money actually benefits the abutting neighborhoods? And many years later, we've done many agreements together. We hope you will look favorably on the latest housing creation proposal for $1.25 million. As many of you sitting here tonight will recall, Parcel 25 is located, and Rob will show you on a map, at the intersections of Columbus, Tremont, and Gurney Streets, directly across Tremont Street from the Roxbury Crossing Orange Line station. And it's also directly across Gurney Street from the Roxbury Crossing Senior Building, also known as the Maria Sanchez House, which provided 40 homes to extremely low income and very active seniors, a project that you also supported. Mission Hill NHS purchased Parcel 25 from the MBTA in 2012. It had been part of the quote-unquote plan for the Interstate 95, and it had been vacant and used for activities that were not community stabilizing for many years since the early 1970s. We were last before you with an extraordinary housing creation proposal from Children's Hospital that you supported, which provided $1.34 million before Children's obligation, but necessary to the Parcel 25 Phase 1A closing. And I am happy to report that having closed on construction financing in July of 2016, we fully occupied the 27,000 square feet office component, which is Metropolitan Boston Housing Partnership, in November of 2017, and we fully occupied the 40 low-income family rental housing by the end of December 2017. So moving that project forth means we have people living in housing today. Eastern Bank has started their fit out on one of the 4 retail spaces at Parcel 25 Phase 1, and we are working actively to lease the remaining 3 spaces. For the 40 affordable housing and accessible units created at Phase 1, we received 3,154 applications. This clearly demonstrates the need for additional affordable housing in this transit-oriented and amenity-rich area. And we are before you for Parcel 25 Phase 2, which will be entirely housing, providing 46 affordable family low-income housing tax credit units, all below 60% of AMI, and with 1 at 50% of AMI and 8 at 30% of AMI, including 5 homeless set-aside units and 3 community-based housing units for people who would be institutionalized but for available accessibility, which this will provide. The building and our goals for all of our building provides universal accessibility, and we will provide more than the required amount of units with 3 Group 2B units and 6 Group 2A units, all accessible, and 3 units fully fit out for those with oral and visual impairments. All of these projects in Roxbury Crossing grew out of a multi-year participatory planning process that involved hundreds of stakeholders in the Mission Hill community. Residents, young and old, abutters from Alice Taylor and nearby Mission, Maine, youth from Sociedad Latina, business owners, and institutional neighbors all joined together to come up with a vision for a transformed Roxbury Crossing. There were hundreds of meetings about our development vision to recreate this area, and we enjoy support of our neighbors, our community-based organizations, and our elected officials. I'm fortunate to live and work in a neighborhood where neighbors see the value of affordable housing as a stabilizer for a community and an important way to ensure the economic, age, racial, and cultural diversity of a community like Mission Hill is retained. The design of Parcel 25 Phase 2 will meet the objectives that came out of this community planning process. Because we're not just building buildings, we're building community, design is extremely important to us. We will have many fronts. We don't like to have backs to our projects because we face many parts of the neighborhood. There will be stoops along Gurney Street, something that came out loudly at the planning process to increase eyes along Gurney Street and recreate Gurney Street as a walkable residential street. The main entrance will be off a newly created pedestrian plaza and connect to the Phase 1 building and then over to the Roxbury Crossing T Station. We are committed to be sustainable and green, both because it allows for healthier homes and because it makes for more affordable long-term operations. We look for products that are durable and support high indoor air quality. We limit the kinds of adhesives, paints, and materials we use, and no carpets. And we reached gold certifiability at the Maria Sanchez House, and we strive to achieve similar here. I'm now going to turn over the presentation to Rob Chandler from Goody Clancy to walk you through the building design, and I thank you for considering our proposal before you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Would it be okay if I walked up to point things out?
Do we have we need to hear it on the microphone. So.
Okay, thanks. So here's the site.
Tim can help point out stuff for you.
View from the north. This is the footprint of the proposed Phase 2 site. Right now it's open space. Next. View from the southwest looking across the vacant site. This is Gurney Street in the foreground and Southwest Corridor in the background. And a view up Gurney Street with the senior building on the left and Phase 1 on the right. The Phase 2 building will be just above that white SUV in the background. This is the central court that Pat mentioned. This is a pedestrian corridor directly from the Roxbury Crossing entrance to the T-stop through the parcel, as you can see, through the middle and leading into Gurney Street. So it's a great conduit for arriving from the neighborhood to the T-stop. Next, please. The summary that Pat described, and I believe the next ones are views of the potential project. one of the intriguing things about this is the first 2 floors are duplexes, so that there is a maximum number of doors and stoops opening out onto Gurney Street. So there are, I believe, 7 or 8 doorways opening onto the street, stoops and a small garden associated with them that I think will make will significantly change the character of Gurney Street. And this is a view as you've left the T-stop looking towards the building. Phase 1 is on the left, future Phase 3 is above us on the right, and this is the main entrance. This is the sort of beacon that's lit up at night, so as you arrive at the project, the development in the evening, that's what you'll see. So in summary, this is what is provided. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. We may have some questions in a second, so that concludes the presentation, Dana?
That's correct. We're concluding the presentation.
Should we have questions, or do you want to go into the public hearing part of it? Public hearing? Okay. So we're going to give the opportunity for the public to participate, and if there's anyone that would like to speak in favor of this proposal, please step up, state your name. Anyone that would like to speak in favor?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board, Minor Perez, representing the Carpenters Union. We'd like to go on record in support of this project. On Phase 1, many of our union carpenters got to participate on the work, and we're very grateful to the developer. Because of that, we're here to support it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Good evening, Director Golden, Chairman Burke, and members of the board. My name is Joanna Sena, and I am here on behalf of Wentworth Institute of Technology to support the Parcel 25 Phase 2 project. This project is very important to us because we are in the neighborhood. We're actually just probably a block away. Bringing more affordable housing to the Roxbury Crossing area is important in terms of further activating and enhancing this area. In addition, the collaboration between institutions and the community is very essential, and in this case, I would like to commend the collaboration between Children's Hospital and the Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services, as this will create a great addition to the neighborhood. We hope that you are supported, and thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity to address you. My name is Ricardo Sanchez. I'm a senior project manager with the Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services. Wanted to first state that we received an email from Senator Sonia Chang Diaz's office. The senator is very supportive of the project and wanted us to reiterate her support for the project and her disappointment that she could not attend this evening. Now I wanted to read the following letter from New England Baptist Hospital for the record. The letter is addressed to Brian Golden, and it is from Trish Hannon, President and Chief Executive Officer of New England Baptist. Dear Mr. Golden, on behalf of New England Baptist Hospital, I would like to express our support for the Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services Parcel 25 Phase 2 construction of affordable housing, and we ask that you please award the $1.25 million in Children's Hospital housing creation linkage to this project. The Parcel 25 Phase 2 project will provide 46 units of much-needed affordable family housing in a 5-story elevated building to be constructed on Gurney Street. This builds upon the successful development of the Maria Sanchez House. Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services had over 3,000 applicants for the Parcel 25 Phase 1 project, clearly showing that there is a continued need for affordable housing. This project will continue the collective efforts to revitalize Roxbury Crossing, gateway to the neighborhood. As an institutional neighbor, Mission Hill is a supporter of the Mission Hill NHS community planning initiative for the Parcel 25 New England Baptist Hospital, has long recognized the positive impact of their work and has had on a long neglected area of the neighborhood. I will provide the letter, but basically saying that the Baptist Hospital is committed to ensuring a strong and vibrant Mission Hill neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. You can give that letter to our secretary, and we'll include it in the record. Thank you.
Okay. Board members and chair, I am Christine Curtis. I am on the board of the Back of the Hill CDC, which last Tuesday night voted to support the funding for this project. And I would like to quickly read a letter which we sent urging the DND and DHCD to support it. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Back of the Hill Community Development Corporation, I am writing to express our strong support for the proposal for funding for Parcel 25, Phase 2 at Roxbury Crossing, as put forth by Mission Hill NHS in their application. Members of our board have been participants in the planning organized by Mission Hill NHS since the beginning of the process. This proposal is in keeping with the community's vision. It will be all residential and continue the desire to recreate Gurney Street as a walkable residential street. The proposal will provide 46 units of much-needed affordable family housing. The proposed transit-oriented development calls for desperately needed new affordable housing. The proof is in the 3,154 applications for housings in the Phase 1A project. So clearly there is an enormous need. This project will continue to enhance the Roxbury Crossing section of Mission Hill and connect this end of the community to the successful One Brigham Circle project at the other end of Tremont Street. The board of the Back of the Hill CDC will continue to work with Mission Hill NHS. I'll stop here on the letter because I want to add just a couple sentences of my own. As a community member, I have lived in the neighborhood since 1973. At that time, I would tell people I lived on Mission Hill, and they said, "Aren't you afraid to live there?" Now everybody wants to live there, but it's no longer affordable. We need more affordable housing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Director Golden, my name is Licia Del Vento, here on behalf of Representative Jeffrey Sanchez, who unfortunately was not able to make it. I just wanted to state for the record that the representative is 100% behind this proposal. He has been involved in this for decades and is so happy to see this collaboration between Children's and NHS. And I do have a letter with his words for the record, so I'll hand that to the clerk. Thank you
very much.
Good evening. My name is Susan St. Clair. I live on Mission Hill, excuse me, since 1970, and it's a fantastic neighborhood. And I'm on the board of NHS, and I was here last probably when we were talking about the senior building. And the senior building was affordable housing, and people are living there now. And it's not just an apartment, it's a community, and there's artwork, and then people come to see the art show that the seniors did, and they're just so happy. It's just a wonderful thing. And now we're going into Phase 2, and that'll be 46 units. And there's a lot of development all around Mission Hill. Fenway, they're building apartments. South Huntington Avenue is filled with apartments, but they're not affordable housing. And that's clearly what people need. One of my sons is in his 30s, and he wanted to stay in the area, and he could not find, he's married, he couldn't find anything that they could afford. And now he's in Florida. My older son, he was married, and they were expecting their first baby in the beginning of the 80s, and they were still living with me. But we couldn't all stay there with the baby and everything. So at the time, the Back of the Hill was first developing the first affordable houses. And they got one of those, and they've just been stable ever since. When they had 4 children, they moved out, and they have a house in another neighborhood. But it's a very supportive project, and anything that you contribute would be fantastic.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for coming tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Golden. My name is Richard Giordano. I'm a board member of Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services, probably on the board for at least 20 years. What I'd like to try and convey to you is how important this project has been to the community and how much the community has been involved in its planning and in all the changes we've had to go through to actually make it happen. We've been working on this project for more than 15 years. Pat told you when we purchased the land from the MBTA. This was a neighborhood-driven planning process. It involved hundreds of people. It went on for probably 2 years. And then the financial crisis in 07, 08 hit, and that derailed everything. And we've been reinventing and coming back ever since. The first way we came back was the senior building. That's not how we thought this was going to work out. We thought we were going to have a large office component, and that would be the generator that would kick off everything. And instead, because of funding and approvals from DND and from you folks years back, we were able to build the senior building. And every time we thought we had a plan, we've had to modify it and work on it. We've gone back to the neighborhood. We've gotten their sign off. We've come back to you, and you've helped us with this proposal. We're now up to phase 2. It wouldn't have happened without Children's Hospital, frankly, and we thank everyone. So I just want to say we need this proposal. We're going to keep at it. We've got more in the pipeline, and we want you to support that too. But we want you to know that the community is behind this. It's a community plan, and it really wouldn't have happened with Children's and without your support. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Okay. Is there any board members that have any questions or follow-up? Go ahead, Ted.
Well, I just have a quick comment. I think this is a great project, and I think it's a model of how the right collaborators coming together with persistence can overcome all kinds of obstacles and truly transform a neighborhood in extremely positive ways. And I could go on, but I won't, other than to say that this is the kind of project that we'd love to see more of. I pass this site usually once a day, sometimes more than that. And the one thing that I would say from a design perspective is that this is a neighborhood and community that is full of a very vibrant mix of young people, students, RCC and Wentworth and Mass Art and Mass Pharmacy just around the corner, the T-stop, the bus stop, a lot of bicyclists who commute along the Southwest Corridor there, the mosque, the health center, Reggie Lewis. It is a neighborhood that I think is underestimated in terms of the complexity of its traffic flow and particularly pedestrian flow. And so the one design comment I would make is that I think it's very important that the site planners and the architect think in terms of sight lines and timing of how people use that intersection. Because you've got buses and ambulances and all kinds of public safety, the police station down the street, all kinds of public safety vehicles passing through there. And I think just based on observation, that particularly for the kids who may be on their way to the track and the like, it's important to factor into some of the site planning, some of the details of how adding units may impact or be impacted by the pedestrian flows and the traffic that flow through that immediate neighborhood. This is a tremendously positive example of how our institutions can work with communities, and communities can work with each other to produce really wonderful outcomes for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Landsmark. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read very quickly into the record. There are a number of entities who provided letters of support for protocol purposes: Roxbury Tenants of Harvard, Sociedad Latina, Mission Hill Health Movement, Mission Hill Community Centers, Mission Church Social Committee, 2 businesses, AK's and Butterfly Cafe, Roxbury Crossing Condominiums Trustees, Friends of Historic Mission Hill, and petitions. Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. As Laura, I'm fighting some laryngitis, so bear with me. I eventually will get to a question, but I have a couple of comments to make. Children's Hospital, no doubt, phenomenal, with not only in healthcare, arguably the best in the world, but also when they construct their buildings, they do so in a way that they hire contractors that are responsible, participate to apprenticeship programs. Their employers have healthcare, their employers have retirement plans, and they should be commended for it, and as Wentworth and others. Mission Hill, I'm not sure which person was here for Mission Hill Neighborhood Youth Service. So I eventually will have a question, but I have some comments, and while I was here, I was online looking at some statistics on 1 Gurney Street. Were you in part of 1 Gurney Street? So as I go through the stats on 1 Gurney Street, I find some real troubling statistics, right? So affordable housing, we need affordable housing because people can't afford housing, right? Seems pretty elementary. The reason they can't afford housing is because they don't make enough. And it's not because they can't buy on the waterfront. When I bought my first house 35 years ago, I didn't look in Beacon Hill. That's not where I make my living and so on and so forth. But I could purchase a house on my salary as an electrician in South Boston, and I had to work a couple of jobs, but so on and so forth. But the reason for housing isn't affordable is people don't make enough money. So it's chicken egg here, and if obviously people made more money, maybe we wouldn't need as much affordable housing. So it brings me to my comments and eventually the question. The 1 Gurney Street project. These projects, we have opportunities to help people that live in those neighborhoods. They're not dentists and doctors, they're manual labor type people that need the most help. And as I go through, Lighthouse Masonry was a contractor on your 1 Gurney Street. They had 0 female hours. Central Glass had 0 minority hours, 0 female hours. The pile drivers, 0 minority, 0 female. Covenant Fire Protection, 0 female hours. Diaz Construction, when it came to their carpentry work, 0 resident, 0 minority, 0 female. Their cement work, 0 female. Their laborer work, 0 female. G. Burnett, the roofing company that worked for you at 1 Gurney, 0 resident hours, 0 female hours. Glen Electric, my trade, they had 12% resident hours, 6.6% female hours. Haywood Baker, the equipment operating company, 0 resident hours, 0 female hours. Diaz Construction, their cement finishing work, 0 resident hours, 0 female hours. So the total project of 1 Gurney had 8% female hours, 34% resident hours. I think you can do better, and I'd like to know how you're going to do better. I know I have friends that live in that neighborhood, in this neighborhood, that are out of work, not out of work today, have been out of work. Were certainly out of work when 1 Gurney Street was going on, and they didn't benefit. And it's their neighborhood, it's their city, lifelong residents. And if 34% of that project was residents, that means 66% of it were people that didn't live in the city. So what's the commitment, and what are you going to do better?
Well, I guess I will say that we don't have the final numbers from that project. We're still in the process of closing out, but we felt like working with the the jobs folks here in the city, we came close to meeting the goals. I understand what you're saying. We also had Section 3 goals, and we did hire local folks from Alice Taylor as laborers. I will say that has happened. We did work closely with the Carpenters Union and did have Tara Construction. We had a union contractor for elevator, and we had a union contractor.
This isn't a union issue.
No, I get that, but I'm just saying that we tried to do a mix of union and we tried to do a mix of non-union, and we worked with a GC who we believe worked with us to come up with an advertising plan and did a reach out plan. If we can sit with the city, if the city has additional Section 3 and minority contractors and women contractors that we can add to the mix, we will clearly do so. I come from a union family, and I come from a City of Boston worker family. I'd like to continue that. We, on both the senior building where we worked with Built Right Construction, we had better numbers than we had on Phase 1. We worked with NEI general contractors on Phase 2. I know they're doing a lot of projects in the city. It is a balance to meet our final numbers and also bring in the units at a number that works, but we would gladly work with trying to put into the contract ways to hire more local folks.
You're going to do that, or you're going to try to do that?
Well, we would like to do that, and I would like I would meet with anyone at the BRA to talk about how we change our language to be able to do that.
So these numbers, you're right, these go through November 2013 to September 2017, not so long ago.
Right.
Tara Construction had 3.44% female hours. These are my numbers.
Right. No, I'm not saying that they're your numbers.
So why do we need more affordable housing? Because people in the city maybe don't have jobs that pay enough to buy housing. Why? Because 66% of them didn't live in the city.
If I may, Mr. Monahan, what I would say, your point is well taken, and from the BPDA perspective, obviously we would work, I would certainly think and would have as a goal for us to make sure we connect this development team with the City of Boston's jobs department, certainly working with our compliance department, et cetera, to work to increase those numbers. You raise an extremely valid point, and given the fact that there's a lot of public dollars being associated with this project, given the fact that there is city money, et cetera, clearly we need to be more intentional, and so we'll work with the development team to make sure that happens.
You look at Children's Hospital's hours, phenomenal. Wentworth, phenomenal. You can do it if you want to.
Well, we want to, but we also want to meet our per unit number too, and we will.
Chicken egg.
No, I understand that, and we do work regularly. Our reports are reviewed through the City of Boston. We did not have any instance where we were called in to deal with the numbers, but I will say that
you shouldn't have to be brought.
Right. No, I agree. I'm just saying that I would like us to be able to figure out, and if there are other best practices where people have been able to put into their bid packages ways to get to hire women in minority contracting, we'd like to see that language and make sure we get that into our bid package and our contract package that goes out in our final contract. I will say our goal is to hire neighborhood people. There used to be a time in Mission Hill where we would say we have a project and people would show up. We did have a lot of walk-ins. We did work with those walk-ins to get hired. A few of them are going to continue to work with the general contractor, but they're not in the skilled labor positions, those walk-ins that we received.
I'm not sure what that meant, but the goals are great.
They're
There's a lot of people January 1st, they had a lot of goals to lose 20 pounds. But most of them, that doesn't happen. So I don't know what you meant about the skilled trades. There's skilled trade people that live in the city, and there's unskilled trade people that live in the city.
Right. And I'm saying that, and I am committing, that we would gladly take any best practices and language to make sure that we're putting forth to the contractors, to the general contractors who are looking at this project, the kinds of hiring practices we want to see. We have been using the language that the city requires related to that, and if you're asking us to do more, we'd like to do more. We do believe, and people from my staff are here who spent a lot of time on the site, we believe we had a diverse workforce on the site. Could it be a better reflection of the city and diversity? Yes.
Okay, are there further questions or comments by the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
And then now I need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.